In this video, we're going to explain how ReadLS came to be, the science behind what ReadLS went to look at, and how reading takes place in the brain. So let's start. Reading is a very complex process, so there are several steps that we need to do in order for reading to take place. We start with recognizing the letters, learning the sounds associated with the letters, the phonemes, the word family and word building, sight word vocabulary, decoding, punctuation, capitalization, spelling patterns, and comprehension. Once we learn something, we can do it without having to think about it. We automatize it, so we're no longer using our working memory. But everything we do for the first time, we use our working memory. We weren't born to learn how to read. We have to teach ourselves how to read. We don't have the neural software that can teach us to convert fast-moving strings of visual symbols into meaning, which is what reading is. Working memory has a limited capacity. Most of the work is done in the subconscious part. Reading needs to be taught and mastered layer by layer, all the skills that we showed you at the beginning. And then we work up to the higher level skills, such as comprehension. Once we master them, we don't have to think about them. They're in our subconscious, and we just retrieve them as we need them. So for instance, if you see the word apple, you don't need to decode it. You don't need to sound it out. You know what the apple looks like, how it's spelled, most of the time, what it looks like, how it's spelled, and what the meaning is of it. Working memory capacity is so limited and so precious, our brain tries to use it efficiently by limiting the time that any particular material can stay in the working memory. Typical readers usually master their reading material efficiently, leaving space in the working memory for the higher level skills such as comprehension. But non-typical readers process the reading material very slowly. They never have enough time to automate their reading skills. Their reading material is shoveled out of the working memory before they can master it, before it gets automatized. Their material disappears into the subconscious like a messy room, in bits and pieces. These bits and pieces are not understood, mastered, or memorized, so they can't recall them automatically without having to think about it. They have to be retrieved back in the working memory, so it's not automatized. The working memory becomes overloaded with the low-level skills, not leaving enough capacity to learn and master the higher level skills such as comprehension. So one thing that's known is that if for weak readers the same material keeps being reintroduced into the working memory, as happens with intensive tutoring, the brain diverts attention away from working memory, shuts down motivation, and shuts down the ability to remember what the word was. Repeating this cycle causes a student to become less and less receptive to learning, and then soon the months have stretched into years and there is quite a gap. What is ReadLS? It's an intervention that breaks down the root causes of resistance to learning how to read. Reiterating, some children process so slowly, content is removed from the working memory by the executive function before a sub-skill is mastered. They cannot automatize the word. So they have to go back and repeat the word every time as if they've never seen it before. So how does ReadLS target this? It introduces content in such a novel and rewarding way that the executive function is fooled into directing cognition and attention to working memory long enough for the child to master and automatize the sub-skill and to have the skills available without the child having to think about it. Over-habituated material reintroduced to working memory is only acceptable to the executive function for a very short period of time. So getting over-habituated material into working memory is special enough, but making neural changes in the short time available is really quite special. So this is Annie, who saw the results for Joel immediately after 1 week. So how we do this? By introducing synchronized, intense cognitive, orthography, and motor function demands, ReadLS maximizes the conditions under which neurons that fire together wire together, so that the brain plasticity enzymes kick in, accelerating neural change so that sub-skills are mastered in an unbelievably short time. Dyslexia. So ReadLS uses the word dyslexia to describe anybody who is resistant to learning to read. We don't care if they have a diagnosis or not. That's not important. If they are having trouble reading and they persistently fail to achieve the reading fluency with good comprehension, then ReadLS is good for them. We also know that some students can read one word at a time, but they can't do the continuous text. They identify single words instead of reading a full sentence and getting meaning for that sentence. They cannot reach 107 words per minute correctly with good comprehension. Scanning studies has shown that dyslexics may either under or overactivate specific regions compared to typical readers. All these evidence are the things that we went to look at to see what was needed in order to help with the reading brain. Overcoming Dyslexia from Sally Shaywitz. She was the first one of the pioneers on describing how the brain works for reading. And she saw immediately the difference with the scanning of the dyslexic brain and the typical reader brain. So we know the parietal temporal system works for the novice reader, and the occipital temporal is the express pathway to reading used by skilled readers. The dyslexics were using 4.6 times as much area of the brain to do the same language task as the controls. So, and that's one of the reasons they come and they have a headache, or they work so hard, their brain is using so much more energy, but just not efficiently. So the parietal temporal system describes the skills targeted by the phonological language-based programs. The occipital temporal system is a high-speed direct link between what the eyes see straight to meaning, the pathway skilled readers use. They see the words, they know what it means, they put meaning to it, and they move on. The parietal temporal system activates almost simultaneously after the occipital temporal system activates. So this suggests that developing the parietal temporal system pathway is necessary for fluent reading with good comprehension, but not sufficient, because Tergeson, who found that some phonic-based programs do not translate into reading fluency with good comprehension. We know that we start with the reading when we're starting first, to learn how to read, we're going to 55 words a minute. And then from there, we need to do stage 2 reading, which is 107 words a minute. And this is where students who are stuck are getting stuck. They can't transition from the 55 words a minute to the 107 words a minute. One brilliant design feature of our eyes allows us to see in the peripheral region. We know that when we read, we actually see about 14 or 15 letters to the right of our fixed focus. So here are a few reasons why somebody has not developed the reading brain. So we have to rewire the non-reading brain step by step. How does ReadLS do this? Working memory is for learning, processing, storage, retrieval of information, and for coding subroutine. It is the only conscious part of our mind blending past, present, and future. It's like the blackboard of the mind. It directs attention, retrieves item from long-term storage, and controls all functions in the working memory. We also know brains that derive pleasure from reading are more likely to practice reading and transfer the word recognition component to the automatic behavioral pathways, thus freeing up limited working memory resources for comprehension. The automatized function shifts from the cognitive pathway to the behavioral pathway. It just gets automatized. So what does this mean? So here is our reading brain. All of these components are necessary to be working and functioning properly in order for us to learn to read correctly. And what can go wrong with the vision? There are a lot of components that are needed for the vision as well. So we knew that a proper intervention should be able to improve the auditory processing speed, improve the visual processing speed, bond the auditory and visual function, increase the working memory capacity, improve attention, motivation, improve eye movement control so we can see in the peripheral vision, and synchronize the data arriving on the left-hand side of the brain. So ReadLS addresses the auditory processing speed in the form of acoustically modified sound to rewire the brain that students can accurately hear the different sounds within the words, so the phonemes. ReadLS also addresses the ocular motor skills development, visual processing skills, and visual contrast sensitivity with translucent and opaque moving graphics. Reading, decoding, relies on the timing between the visual and auditory system, which ReadLS bonds through acoustically modified sounds in conjunction with the specialized motion graphics. Here are what our games target. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all the areas, and on the right-hand side are our games. And underneath those little dots will explain what we target. So ReadLS, we target attention, cognition, novelty, and we give rewards. And we work with the auditory system, the visual system, and the motor system. And all of this is needed in order for the brain to read properly. The ReadLS is a 40-hour program, and we have a placement test assessment that we start with. Then the program will add the student to the correct level. We have 15 one-hour sessions, which can be completed within 5 weeks. It can be completed shorter if you would like. 15 one-hour sessions can be done in a row. Then we have 5 sessions a week for 10 weeks, so 50 sessions of speed reading, and then 50 sessions of reading exercises. And that is to bond what has been corrected in the cognitive therapy program, from the cognitive therapy program. And then we have a final assessment. For more information, don't hesitate to contact us.